Welcome back. I am Jim. There's Deb.
Hello.
Jack is here.
Let's go.
Let's do It's Only Money.
Helping people passionate about planning for their future rise above investment myths to build real wealth.
Isn't that really just common sense financial advice?
It's both.
Oh, okay.
It's Only Money with Scott Brown from Edgewater Family Wealth.
Good and loud for our friend, Mr. Scott Brown from Edgewater Family Wealth.
Thank you.
Hey, man, before we get started, I don't know about you, because we don't get to talk a lot outside of the program. We're just very busy people.
Sure.
I actually am very excited that your seminars are loading up and that people from the show are showing up and trying to get this knowledge and trying to make their life better. I hope it hits you the same way, because it actually makes me feel very good inside when people take an initiative, because I had that moment in my life. You know, I had that what the F moment in my life where I felt like it was time to kind of put myself into gear and get some initiative going and get some information that I can use down the road. And it really is, I mean, for you guys listening to the show who have been to these seminars, I congratulate you greatly, because you've made the first step to at least taking control of something that you can make better in your life.
Yeah, I mean, 2 points to make there. First of all, yeah, it's, as I've said many times on the show, at some point you got to get pissed off, right?
Yeah, right.
And this is the first step to taking action. And it's just learning. I mean, people are not always lifelong learners. I've said this many times. Most people establish their views on things important, money, politics, whatever it is, at age 18 or 19, and then spend the rest of their lives trying to defend it. I think, think about the person you were at 18 and some of the dumb things you thought. Maybe it's time to upgrade the knowledge if you're 32 or 35 or 37 or 45 or whatever it is, in coming to these events. And I say this to people all the time about the events, and there are many listeners that come to these events, and some of them will say, well, is everybody going to become a client? The reality is no. Most of them are not going to become clients, at least right away, right? So my goal is to educate as many people in the audience as I can. And if they go out and they take some 1, 2, 3, half an idea and come back in 5 years, they might be good clients for our firm.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, that's the idea. And the second thing I was going to say is that people say to me when they listen to the show, they're like, Jim really is enthusiastic about this topic as he seems, and I'm like, no, weirdly the dude's really into it. So I mean, I think it's a great service, hopefully, that we're all doing here, in that educating people as best we can to make the best moves they can.
Well, the thing is I just know how it's enlightened my existence. And again, I am, we say this on the air all the time. We talk about this all day. I am not a wealthy man. I am a comfortable man, but I'm not a wealthy man. I've made the moves to put myself in a good position in the next 10 years of my life, so that I can do what I want in my retirement. And that was my entire goal from the beginning. And I think that the misconception is maybe you expect to take, a $5,000 seed investment and turn that into $2.1 million in 10 years because of a magical investment. It doesn't work like that.
It does not.
You got to think of it like a brisket. You got to set it low and let it cook.
Slow and low, baby.
Let it cook a long time.
Yeah.
But the reason I made that car stereo joke, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
When I was young, I had an aunt that did well for herself that I'd only met a couple of times. Great Aunt Nita.
Yeah.
All right. Great Aunt Nita had done okay for herself. And when she passed away, she left the grandkids, I think it was $1,200 a piece.
Uh-huh.
And I got that $1,200 check, and I raced to the car stereo place,
of course,
to put a $900 car stereo into an $800 car.
I think we've all been that guy. I wrote down the word Craco. Remember the old Craco from high school? Yeah. Craco, and I remember getting made fun of because I bought a Craco or something. And all my friends are like, Craco, what is that?
You need Alpine.
Pioneer.
Kenwood, Nakamichi.
Kenwood.
Yes, I remember being made fun of in my youth.
And you want to do that. You wanted that so bad because you put so much value in that. And of course, looking back, I laugh and clown at myself for decisions like that. It's the normal thing you do. But the whole idea of the segment is to break those norms so that you can understand, nobody really cares about your car stereo, but that $1,000 could be $50,000 right now.
And to that end, so that before I forget, my marketing people yell at me. So we do have an event on the 24th.
By the way, you are your marketing people.
I keep forgetting to say things that they tell me are important. So April 24th is the event here in Orlando at the Roost Chris at 11 o'clock. And then again on the 26th in Mountain Door. Now, I will say about the Orlando event, we have Rob Kurtzreiter coming out, who's a real estate expert, in addition to Greg Rossler, who's, of course, our Medicare guy. Everybody knows about Greg. But having Rob is a bit of a catch because he's a bit of an expert on real estate. So if you have questions like on home values, what's the real estate market doing, he's going to spend 10 or 15 minutes catching everybody up on that. And then the last thing I will remind everybody is if you can't come to the event because you're working or whatever's getting in the way, we'll always do consults, so you can sign up for a consult over the phone or directly or in person rather, right there on our website at edgewaterfamilywealth.com.
Absolutely. Let's get to it. By the way, you do have some other stuff coming up in May. We'll talk about it at the end of the segment.
Yep.
This is so funny because it basically goes exactly what we're talking about. The first thing you sent over is wealthy people buy assets, poor people buy things.
Yes.
How assets eventually do the work for you. And this basically is exactly what we were just talking about.
It is. Yeah, it's interesting because we all want, and then people will say, well, you buy stuff. I'm not saying don't buy stuff, right? I like stuff. I have stuff. I'm not against stuff.
I love stuff.
Well, yeah, we love stuff. But the reality is, think about what that purchase means to you. I had a mentor once tell me, what does this decision mean 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 months, and 5 years from now, right? And think about what maybe that pair of shoes that you didn't really need or that new cell phone that you really didn't need means. And again, I'm not saying, cut off the power, shut down the cable, and sit and stare at the wall. What I'm saying is there are decisions we make day to day that maybe we could do better with. And I actually sat down and figured this out, and I thought, what's a stock everybody knows, like Johnson & Johnson,
sure,
right? And
yeah.
this is by no means, I'm not telling you to buy Johnson & Johnson or not buy Johnson & Johnson. It's just an example, pays about a 3% dividend. So I figured out if you put $100 a month into Johnson & Johnson for 10 years, you'd have somewhere in the neighborhood of about $20,000, assuming a 5 to 7% rate of return. But what's more important to that is you're putting $100 a month in. At the end of 10 years, Johnson & Johnson's dividend is putting $50 on top of your $100, right? So now you're getting, theoretically, if you use 401k type language, you're getting a 50% match on your $100 every time you put it in. You cut to 20 years later, you've got $30,000. Now the number's more like 1 to 1. You're putting in 100, the dividend's paying you about $1,200 a year, which is $100 a month, right?
Right.
You get to the end of 30 years, you might have $80,000 in there at the same rate of return, which is now doubling the 200 to 200 a month on top of your 100. The point being is if you buy stuff, it generally goes away or ends up in a drawer somewhere, right, or in the garbage bin. If you buy assets that produce income, and that could include stocks, that could include bonds, that could include mutual funds, that could include real estate, whatever it is. But you must, when you don't have to because many people don't, but you should start looking for opportunities to find something that when you give it money, it will eventually give you money back.
Exactly. Here's what happens in small towns like I grew up in. And again, I'm not casting any, I'm not judging anybody out there. So just please understand this. I don't ever want this segment to think like we're trying to make you feel bad or I'm trying to make you feel bad because these are all steps that I took, that a lot of people took to make their lives a little bit better. Here's what I used to see in my hometown a lot. Guy gets a raise. He works out at the mill. Mm-hmm. He's been working at the mill for a while, making, $16, $17 an hour, right? Yeah. Comes up and he goes, man, you haven't missed a day at work. We're bumping you up. You're a supervisor now. You're making $20 an hour now, and I've got $3 more an hour to spend. And that's the key, to spend, right?
Right.
So you get that raise. You get that extra $200 or $300, $400 a month. What do? You go out and buy a four-wheeler or a bass boat or a new, lifted pickup truck or whatever because now you can, quote, afford it.
Yep.
Rather than maintaining the same lifestyle and taking that money that you have extra now and investing it and acting like you never got that raise is a key in doing what we talk about all the time.
Yeah, I think, and again, that four-wheeler or jacking up that truck, which in 5 years isn't going to be worth a doodly. Yeah. How many jacked up trucks do you see sitting on the roadside with a wheel falling off, right? I mean, that's again, it's a young person thing to do. I did it too. I bought cars and jacked up my Mustang and did all that nonsense I shouldn't have done when I was young, but that's how I learned, right? If you're 40 and you're still having this conversation with yourself, it's probably not okay. I mean, we grow as we age, hopefully. We learn lessons, we make mistakes and learn from those. It's the people who don't learn from the mistakes that end up in trouble. But again, if you're buying real estate or you're buying a rental property or you're buying something, again, when you add money to an investment, you have to say to yourself, what is this going to do for me down the road? And if it's paying a 3% dividend, in my example, like Johnson & Johnson, the math's simple. You can sit down and figure out, if I keep doing what I'm doing and it keeps doing what it's doing, in 20, 30, 40 years, I'll be getting more back from this thing than I ever put into it.
Sure, yeah.
So I think it's a matter of it's all comes back to the same thing we always talk about. It's self-discipline, it's process, it's determination, and again, it's a little bit get angry. Hey, I'm going to fix this problem.
Absolutely. Here is Scott Brown from Edgewater Family Wealth, edgewaterfamilywealth.com. All this information that we talk about today, you can find on his website. We'll also put it up on the goods at jimcolbertlive.com, which is very important because your website offers a lot of free information. By the way, do you have the video we're about to talk about up there?
I do, yeah. We were talking about the Scott Galloway video that I sent. I don't know what Jack thought of it.
I loved it. I watched the whole thing this morning at like 6:30. And then I also added it to our website at Jim Colbert Live.
Very nice.
Yeah.
It's called Build Wealth or Die Trying. I've never heard of this, gentleman, but the what you have here is why what you read in the newspaper or online is almost useless. People confuse information for knowledge.
Yes. And we have plenty of information these days, do we not?
We have tons of information.
And a lot of people confuse that information for knowledge. So what I'm saying there is a lot of times somebody will come to me and say, I read in Barron's, or I read in the Wall Street Journal, or I saw in Money Magazine, and I think I really need to jump on this and get ahead of it. So what I have to then explain to the person is that was written by a 27-year-old journalist, and everybody and their mother has already read it, right? So if millions of people are reading the Wall Street Journal and you see an idea about a stock, you have to also assume the other 2 or 3 million people that read that saw that information, and likely the Wall Street community knew that before it was printed.
Way before it was
printed. The experts or quote-unquote professionals are probably way ahead of you. So this idea that you're going to outsmart the market, it's why we diversify, right? You diversify. Diversification is for the purpose of managing risk and making it okay to be a little bit wrong from time to time. Because if you buy one thing, if you say, I'm betting the ranch on Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
And if Bitcoin doesn't work out, then you're screwed, right? But had you said, I'm going to put a little in Bitcoin, but I'm also going to buy some mutual funds, I'm going to add to my 401k, I'm going to add to real estate, all these boring things nobody cares about that all work long term, right? It's okay to take a flyer, but if your whole premise, your argument is based on Bitcoin going from 60 to 200, that's probably not solid ground to stand on.
It's not, but you know what? It's funny you bring Bitcoin up. I know we talk about that a lot in a laughing manner, but Bitcoin's dominating the news right now because it's doing well and it's about to split, I guess. It's going to do a thing I don't even know what it is. So you see a lot of information out there, and people who are on the edge with Bitcoin now are seeing this information, not knowledge, and they may make a decision with their money on something that they don't really understand completely.
Yeah, we could go on all day about the Bitcoin information, if you will.
Yeah.
I find it a fascinating and maddening conversation all at the same time. But, again, I've said this many times on the show. Look, I don't know what Bitcoin is. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know if there are practical applications for it down the road. I can't speculate on that because I don't know enough about it to speculate.
Yep.
But the problem is your buddy who's talking about it also doesn't have enough information to speculate.
Here's enough for me when it comes to Bitcoin. Warren Buffett said he wouldn't own one piece of it, and Warren Buffett's the greatest investor that ever lived in this country that I know of. And I would never in a million years, buck what that dude said or what he saw in the market.
Yeah, I'm with you on it. I wouldn't fight Warren Buffett when it came to an investment contest. But the reality is, most people, I shouldn't say. Let me back up. Nobody can tell you exactly what it is or how it's going to turn. It's no different than anything else. Nobody knows what the stock market's going to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what the bond market's going to do. Nobody knows what the Fed's going to do with interest rates. We can guess. We can speculate. Some things make sense. Some things don't. Maybe inflation is this, unemployment's that, and maybe they'll do this, and then they don't, right?
Yeah, they're supposed to be already cut this year.
Yeah, we should have cut 4 times based on what most people... We've been through 3 recessions, according to the experts this year. So, again, you can't put too much stock in a short-term conversation. What we do know is if you invest over the long term, this goes back to probability over possibility. Bitcoin is a possibility. It's a pretty neat possibility. It's an interesting and sexy and
it gets a lot of media coverage.
Interesting possibility,
you see a lot of people getting super rich with it, right?
Not a lot of people, but a few people.
What the point is that's all they show. They don't show the people who are sitting there with nothing in their hands after investing and losing.
Right. It's understanding that that's a possibility, but not a high probability. What's a high probability is you save in your 401k, you do it for 30 years, you earn 5, 6, 7, 8%, whatever it is. Your company matches a bit of it, and literally millions of people in this country have retired with 7 figures in their retirement.
Oh, yeah, all day long.
That's a high probability. That's not just a possibility. That's a high probability.
A couple questions coming in from the texting service, Scott, that we haven't heard yet. I would like to point these at you here.
Yep.
Is it worth discussing with a financial professor if I only have 5 years, or professional with only 5 years until retirement? So I assume this guy's maybe 60, 61, asking, is it worth the time to go see someone like you with only 5 years until they retire?
Well, what's the alternative?
Not doing it.
Do nothing. Yeah. So I would say the answer is yes. You should do it. The answers may not be groundbreaking. They may say, look, you're in a tough spot, but here's the things you should do to make that spot less tough. Right? So I would suggest absolutely you do that.
And here's the other question, and I think this is the one that most people out there right now would ask themselves or tell themselves. This is like taking a financial gun and putting it under your chin and squeezing the trigger as many times as you possibly can before you fall to the ground. I'm 40 years old. Is it too late?
You poor guy or
Scott,
gal.
am I right when I say that?
Yes.
That people automatically think, like, I'm 40 years old. I'm way past the idea of getting in a good position financially.
That's insanity.
I've let all that time get under the bridge on me. Man, if you believe that,
Yep.
you have got to correct your thought process.
Yep.
That is a... you can't stick your head under the train track fast enough for that mentality.
It's self-defeating.
Yeah, it is.
It's. First of all, since we're on the Warren Buffett thing, you do know that 2/3 of the wealth that Warren Buffett has today occurred after the age of 60.
Really?
Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
So the money the billions, 80 billion, whatever he's worth, 2/3 of that occurred after he turned 60.
Absolutely.
So 40. Man, you got eons. Remember
right.
that the average person lives to be 84, 85 years old nowadays. In 20 years, you can amass all kinds of wealth if you're smart about it, right? So, yes, obviously we're all kind of giggling about the 40-year-old. I'm 59, so we're all giggling about the 40-year-old who's worried he can't or she can't get where they're going. I promise you at 40, there's plenty of time to correct course. Even if the course is really bad, even the things you've done really bad, even if you're in debt, even if you have issues you think are largely unresolvable, I promise you they are not.
Well, I'll be damned. Hey, somebody else says, is it worth my time if I only have $500 to invest?
$500 in totality?
I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, for the person, if it's I have $500 a year or a month or whatever it is, certainly it's not too little. If you're saying I only have $500, what I would say is you need to build up savings first. The critical part, here's the thing that happens to people. Sometimes they listen to somebody like me and they get all excited and they're like, I'm going to invest everything, right? And so they say, I've got $3,000 in my checking account. Here, have it. You don't want to do that. No, because what happens is you invest $3,000, the air conditioning goes out, and then you're calling the person back and saying, give me $2,800 back.
Or you're putting that on a credit card at 17%.
Yeah, so you want, and again, people argue over silly things like, is it 6 months, or is it 3 months, or is it 12? Listen, I don't care. Put enough money in an account that makes you comfortable that if something bad happens, the radiator goes out, the air conditioning blows up, the roof has a problem, you can pay for those things, and maybe a little more than that, maybe a month or 2 or 3 or 4 of expenses in case you get hurt, you get laid off, whatever. After that, that's where it becomes investable money, because if you don't have that cash available, as they say, cash is king, then you end up digging into the things you don't want to dig into.
Right. Yeah. Or you get yourself in a position never to leave yourself cash poor. Got to learn that lesson as well.
Yeah.
You think you're doing the right thing, and if you say life is always like, there you are. You need $500. Oh, credit card. Now you're $500 at 17%. You can't pay off.
And people get bent. I also have clients, and this happens with clients sometimes. I will, especially if they're taking income in retirement, I keep a large store of cash. In the event the market doesn't do well that year, they don't have to sell securities they don't want to sell right then, right? So I have this whole model. I have an algorithm I built. I have a rule, Scott's rule, that everybody knows about cash. But some of them fight me. They're like, well, if I have that much money in cash, it's only earning X, whereas the market's doing that. And I'm like, it's okay. Sometimes you win by not losing, right? So people who get all caught up and is every dime in the most optimal place, that's just silliness. You're never going to have every dime in the most optimal place. What you have is buckets of money so that you can leave the long-term bucket alone.
Absolutely. Scott Brown, Edgewater Family Wealth. Scott, again, we only have a few seats for the 24th and 26th left.
Yeah, we have, but for both. For Mount Dora at 1921 in Mount Dora on the 26th, we have a few seats left. I was just told we have a few left for Orlando on the 24th, and you can sign up for that at edgewaterfamilywealth.com.
And remember, this costs nothing. And matter of fact, on top of that, you do get lunch, and you'll have a real estate professional at one, and you'll also have
a Medicare
professional.
Yep.
And I think the real estate professional thing is very important. People are scared of real estate. It's expensive, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But it also earns quite well. Part of my whole thing is investing in real estate. That's what I've done forever. You can't lose in Florida. And even if your equity doesn't go up exponentially like a lot of people think, you're basically just investing your money in a house and you're not spending it. You're going to get that money back, and you are going to make some money on it. If you get a good place and a good spot, you could do quite well. But you just got to make sure that you pay attention to these things.
It's most people's largest investment, and the good news is you can't sell it when the market stinks, right? Because you got to live somewhere, right? So people think that the stock market or that their homes are their best investment, not because they've outperformed in terms of rate of return, the stock market, but because when the housing market drops, you still have to live there.
Right.
So you can't sell into a bad market.
Right.
If you wake up your spouse and say, hey, the housing market's down, get up, we're moving, we're leaving, we're getting a tent, that's not going to go over real well. Whereas with stocks, people tend to get out at the wrong time.
Good and loud for Scott from Edgewater Family Wealth. And again, He has some books. The book is I even hate saying this.
Yeah, you can say it.
Yeah. I've never made anybody rich.
That's correct.
And what was the other one?
We have an ebook called I Got a Guy that teaches you how to work with a financial advisor. So if you're out there and you're a little concerned, I don't know how to do this, there's an ebook you can download for free on our website.
The website is a plethora of information, edgewaterfamilywealth.com. Use that as a tool to get yourself in a better position. And, of course, learn about those spots. Get yourself one. It costs nothing. You'll get a free lunch and information that can change your life.
We look forward to having you.
Good seeing you, boss. All right, 407-916-1041. Load them up. It's time for trivia. Killer prize up next.
We have a prize. Get on board at 407-916-1041. Jim Colbert Show Trivia is brought to you by Cento Family Moving